Yomi, up to page 431. Halacha 12. No, I'm sorry. We're back to really here. Let's do back to 429. Halacha 4. Shulchan Aruch rules that that a davar lach, right, liquid object such as water or soup, cannot be reheated once it is cold, once it's not scalding hot. And furthermore, for a davar lach, liquid food, one may not put it on the ground after it's taken off the hot plate. If you put it on the ground, even if it's still hot, you cannot put it back on. Okay. We said because it's considered cooking. It's considered recooking when it gets cold and you put it back on the plata. It's considered you cooked it on Shabbat. And also, if you put it on the floor, you can't put it back on the plata because it's considered, it looks like cooking. It looks like cooking. T'nai chazara, the condition, one of the conditions of chazara is that it has to be that you did not put it on the ground, because then it looks like you're cooking, like you're putting it the first time on the pot, on the plata. It's talking about a liquid food. A liquid food. Okay, good. Now, if it's a solid, so then even if you put it on the ground, you would be permitted to put it back. It's only when it's we're talking about here where it is a liquid food, a liquid food. Okay, good. Now, what? If it's both, so we said there's opinions who say if majority is salad, then it's good. But the Halacha Brura says that it has to be that your intention is to eat the salad and you don't care for the liquid. If you care for the liquid also, then it's problematic. So the person should try to be machmir, but he has what to rely on if it's majority salad. Okay, good. 10, like we said before, the liquid food cannot be reheated usually. But if the davar lach is a liquid that the taste will be spoiled through further cooking, it may be placed next to the fire, even though it will reach the salted bowl. Okay, it's not such a easy leniency because you never know if it's really going to get spoiled if it cooks more. Okay, now number 12. Through a combination of factors, one may reheat a cold cooked liquid on a hot plate that's set on a timer that will turn on after the soup is placed on the hot plate. So let's say you want to heat up a soup and the soup got cold already on Shabbat. So you can't put it on the plata hot like that. It's cooking on Shabbat. You can't reheat liquids. But if you put the pot of soup on the plata and the plata's off currently, and it has a timer attached to it that eventually will go on in an hour, whatever it is, 45 minutes, so then it's mutar, because when I put the soup on the plata, it was off and it went on by itself. So that's okay. It's not considered that I put it on a fire. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that. Now, this is where the soup was cooked before Shabbat. It was just got cold on Shabbat. It's not talking about a raw food. We're not talking about to cook like this. If the food was not cooked before Shabbat, it's not permitted to place it on a hot plate, even if it was set with a timer. Another way to heat up soup on Shabbat, you can ask a goy. Because anything that's a mahloket, if it's a sur or not, you're allowed to ask a goy, right? So therefore, it's mahloket. In the Rishonim, we said, if reheating liquids on Shabbat is a sur. Now there are Rashba, Rambam who say reheating liquids on Shabbat, if they were cooked before Shabbat, it's okay to reheat it on Shabbat, even though we don't follow their opinion. We follow like the Shulchan Aruch, who's machmir like the Rosh. But nonetheless, it's mahloket. You're allowed to ask the goy to reheat the liquids. Okay, good. Halacha 14. A food that is mostly dry and only has a little sauce, such as meat or fish, may be warmed up on Shabbat. They're considered a dry item. If the sauce is significant, even though the majority of the dish is dry food, it's proper to be stringent, not to warm it up, like I told you. Okay, good. It's 15. Let's say when it was Hanukkah, right? Jelly donuts. Are you allowed to heat up a jelly donut on Shabbat on the hot plate? It is proper to be stringent and not to warm up a jelly donut, because many companies add uncooked water to the jelly. Interesting. What is considered solid? What is considered liquid? What's the borderline? So 16, a sauce is very thick, such as ketchup, is considered a solid. Why? Because if it doesn't run when you tilt it, it doesn't drip, that's considered a solid. But if it drips, it's considered a liquid. 17, one may rewarm a soft-boiled egg, even if it will cook further. However, it's proper and to be stringent, only to reheat it with a klisheni. 18, congealed fat, right? Sometimes you have fat of meat that it was liquid, but then it becomes a solid when it becomes cold, right? Congealed fat that was cooked before Shabbat is considered a dry item and may be rewarmed on Shabbat, even though it'll melt and become a liquid. It's viewed as a solid. It's viewed as a salad. Okay, what do you go by? Meaning, because the rule is you go by what's the item and room temperature. Room temperature, this is a solid. It becomes a solid, so that's what it's treated as. Since the room temperature is a solid. Like let's say cholent, right, or svol. In the room temperature, let's say it would be very liquid. It would drip. So it's considered liquid. So the guy said, but I put it in the fridge. I put it in the fridge. It became hard. It became like a solid. That doesn't treat it like a solid now. You have to go by what is it when it's room temperature. Okay, good. Better. 23. Using a stove, we already spoke about before. We said that you have to have a covered fire. Nobody can use an open stove on Shabbat. What about hot plate? 25. Hot plates known as plata and urns that operate at a single temperature and cannot be adjusted may be used without a covering. Do you have to put a covering, aluminum sheets on top of the plata? No, technically you don't. A hot plate doesn't need a covering since it's made with a metal covering over the heating elements. It's already covered. It's already considered covered because the coils inside are covered with the sheet of metal that the plata comes with. What if you have a plata with a knob? There's some plata hot plates that have knobs that adjust the temperature, medium, high, low. Over there, if it can adjust the temperature, once you cover the knobs or take them off before Shabbat, and cover the hot plate with foil as well. Okay, good. We said before, crock pot. You have to, if you want to reheat food on a crock pot, you must place very thick or several layers of foil on the walls of the heating device. Even though the heating element is covered by metal, also, since that's the way you usually use it, so now you have to put another layer. You can't just rely on the fact that the coils are covered. You have to go and put another aluminum on top.
Even if your crock pot has already got black.
Yeah, even so. 28, yeah.
With the knob, even if it has a thermostat, it goes on and off. It's problematic with there because some of them go off and on, some of them don't. It's just number one.
Still, the fact that you can adjust it is the problem. So if you have
but
to.
He has a knob. He has a knob. Let's say on top, you cannot.
You have to cover it. You have to cover it.
The knob is you could put it. You cannot.
What do you mean? You can make it that you can't touch it, you can't move it?
There's a knob.
There's a lock?
It, yes.
Okay, so that's good. As long as you make it that you can't move it. 28.
Chef Pro.
If one's chamin or cholent is burning on Shabbat and it's liquidy enough to be considered a liquid, right? Then how do you keep it from burning? How do you protect it from burning? Number one, either you could ask Ashkenazi to add water from Kli Rishon into the pot, right? And then you could be replaced on the hot plate because we don't have this minhag. We don't have this minhag to allow reheating a liquid even though it's not from Kli Rishon into another Kli Rishon. We don't have this minhag. Ashkenazim do, but for us it's a sur. So you can ask technically Ashkenazi to do it. B, you could take the pot off the fire, put another pot under it, and then put the pot back on top. That way it stays warm but doesn't burn. Or a person, number C, this is another chidush, one may place a ladle into a pot of hot water that's Kli Rishon, wait till the ladle becomes very hot, it's yas let it go, and then the ladle will be considered like Kli Rishon, and then you can add it to the chamin by sticking the ladle in there. So what we'll do, I'll take the ladle, put it in the urn, wait till it gets hot, and it's like a Kli Rishon, and then I'll take the ladle out, put it in the pot, and leave it like that, and the water will come out, because that way it was in the Kli Rishon the entire time. It's not like I poured water in the air to the pot. I took it from a Kli Rishon, and this is a moving Kli Rishon, and I put it back into Kli Rishon. It was in Kli Rishon the entire time. Or D, another option would be to put a cooking safe bag filled with water in the pot before Shabbat, and when I see the food is burning, to pop the bag, and that way everything is the same temperature anyways, and that way I'll give the chamin another life. Okay, 29. When placing food in the oven before Shabbat, one does not need to cover the heating elements of the oven, provided the oven has a steady temperature and the food is entirely cooked from before Shabbat. It's praiseworthy to put a paper that says Shabbat. Right? Sometimes the ovens have Shabbat mode that says Shabbat already, so that's good. 30. When one removes food from the oven on Shabbat, you got to make sure that the thermostat is not active, because if the thermostat is active, when you open the door, it's going to turn on the fire. So therefore, you have to have Shabbat mode that doesn't play with the thermostat. Okay. 31. One may not place food in the oven on Shabbat, even if the oven is not on, but has enough heat that it can cook. So therefore, a person has to be careful not to put food into the oven that will make it cook. In order to reheat food in the oven on Shabbat, you have to have Shabbat mode that doesn't cause the fire to go on. The heating elements must be covered. It can't be that you see the fire. And then also, you need to make sure that if it's a liquid, that it's not cold, and if it's a solid, that it's fully cooked. And also, you have to make sure with the light, you have to be careful the light doesn't go on. And finally, you need to have a sheet, a metal sheet or a pan, upside down under the pot, to show that you're not actually cooking like you do during the week. During the week, what do? We just stick the food in there like that. So therefore, we have to make something different that doesn't look like how we cook during the week by putting an empty sheet of metal or pan under to show I'm doing something else. I'm doing something called reheating and not cooking.